So they are using these verbal masquerades, verbal plays, which create what we can say an ambience of Purvarag. Hello, welcome back to Nibble Pop. Today we will be continuing with our textual reading of Shakuntala, and just like the previous two classes, we will be focusing on important lines. In our today's discussion, we will be taking up the third act, which is entitled Love's Fruition. The setting continues to be the hermitage of Kanno because we are still within the lapse of nature. In the first two acts, we have seen how Dushyanto has started to fall in love with Shakuntala, but in this act, we will see how his love meets acceptance and equal fervor from Shakuntala's end. Among other characters, we will see Anusua and Priyambada playing vital roles in helping us understand Shakuntala's state of mind and also in creating a kind of background against which we can judge the character of Shakuntala. The act begins with a prelude and then continues. So first we will see what happens in the prelude. The prelude offers us a background so that we are mentally prepared for the lines which we are going to read in the main act. It begins with a speech of the pupil who talks about Dushyanto and his contribution to keep the peace of the ashram. He says, "Oh, what a mighty monarch Dushyanto is! No sooner had he entered our hermitage than all our sacred rites became completely free of all unexpected disturbances." So we were getting this idea that the sacred rituals of the ashramites, they were disturbed by demons, which are basically people who are mostly tribal people who keep on bothering these sages and ascetics, and Dushyanto took an active step to get rid of these disturbances. Along with this, he also gives us an idea about Shakuntala's state of affairs. He says, "Ho there, Priyambada, say, for whom are you carrying these lotus leaves on their tender stalks, and the cooling balm of the fragrant uzira root?" As if listening to a reply. So Priyambada is not on stage. This pupil, this young man from the ashram, he is pretending to listen to somebody's reply, and he continues to say, "What did you say? Oh, that Shakuntala has suffered a heat stroke, that these things are to cool her burning frame." So we gathered information about Shakuntala's condition, that she is suffering from a heat stroke. We will come to know more about this later. "Priyambada, listen, let her be looked after with the greatest care, for she is the very life breath of the patriarch." So we also get to know that Shakuntala is not only a vital presence in the ashram, she is also very close to Kanno's heart. Kanno is the patriarch here, the main male figure who controls everything, who is the head of this ashram. And then the prelude ends. So prelude is not completely connected to this act, but it is like a prologue which sets the tone of the rest of the act. So we have here a background created for us where Dushyanto is established as the protector of the ashram and Shakuntala is established as the life force of the ashram. Now the king enters, and this is the official beginning of the act, and he is deeply in love, and he says, "I know well the holy power of penance immense." Penance means when you voluntarily undergo a kind of suffering in order to attain a higher goal. So for the king at this moment, penance refers to his sufferings, his pangs of love, because Shakuntala is like a divine object which he wants to get in life. The young girl is dependent on another's will. So the main hurdle between him and Shakuntala is her parents' consent, because in traditional Indian society, it is expected that the parents give their blessings so that their daughters be married to somebody. But like water flowing down, my heart is truly powerless to return. So he knows that at this moment, he does not have complete authority over Shakuntala, who is governed by the rules of the patriarch, who is governed by Kanno. He is feeling powerless, but at the same time, he is not able to return to his palace. O God, who churns men's minds. The word which Kalidas uses is Manmatha. Manmatha means somebody who churns the mind, who disturbs and agitates the hearts. This means the love god or Kama. How is it that your weapons claimed to be flowers are so sharp? It is believed that Kamdev, his weapons are made of flowers. But when he attacks somebody with his weapons, then they suffer a lot because of love's pain. Oh yes, I know why. Shiva's fiery wrath must still burn in you. Now this refers to an incident where Lord Shiva, he got so angry with Lord Kam that he burnt him just by staring at him. So it kind of relates to the feelings which a lover feels, the feeling, the burning sensation inside that a lover feels when that person is stuck with Kamdev's weapon, because Kamdev himself suffered these burning sensations because of Shiva's anger. So he says, Shiva's fiery wrath means anger, must still burn in you. So once Shiva burnt you down, maybe that burning is still going on inside you. Like fire smoldering deep in the ocean's depths, were it not so, how can you burn lovers like me, when mere ashes is all that is left of you? So because Kamdev was burned down by Shiva's anger, he is only ashes now. So here Dushyanta is questioning that if Lord Kam or Kamdev has turned into ashes, how can he burn others now? How can he burn King Dushyanta? So this is how Kalidas is bringing in all kinds of mythologies, all kinds of allusions into his poetry, into his play. And this is the quality of Nataka. It widens your vision. It does not only talk about mere mortals. It talks about gods and divine presences and divine allusions. So this is where we find Kalidasa being poetic, because he was actually a poet. And when a poet writes a natak, he infuses in the lines all the poetry he can gather. Dushyanta continues in a very poetic manner. We will just skip to the part where he uses prose. Now that the ascetics free of impediments means troubles. We knew that these people of the ashrams, they were troubled by the disturbing demons, and Dushyanta got rid of them. So these impediments, these troubling disturbances were taken care of. Free of impediments, have given me leave to withdraw. So now from the Ashramites' side, Dushyanta was free to go because he had taken care of their troubles, but he does not want to go because of Shakuntala. Where can I find solace for my weary heart? Weary means saddened, sorrowful. At this hour when the noonday sun blazes down with cruel heat, Lady Shakuntala with her friends usually retires to the Malini's banks. Malini is the river. So now that it's noonday and it's very hot, he knows that Shakuntala must have gone to the bank of the river Malini with her friends to cool it off. Where flowering vines form shady bowers. Well, that's where I shall go. So he is trying to approach Shakuntala and he goes to the place where she must be resting. When he reaches there, he finds that Shakuntala is with her friends Priyambada and Anushva, and she is looking visibly very sick. Her friends gather that she must feel the heat of the sun and trying to cool her down. "Dear Shakuntala," her friends say, "does the breeze of these lotus leaves soothe you somewhat?" So they are fanning her with lotus leaves to make her feel cool. "What? Are my dear friends fanning me?" So she does not even realize what her friends are doing. She is lost in thoughts. She is thinking about this young man who had taken away all her concentration. Now the king speaks a few words, but he does not speak to these women. He speaks as an aside, which the audience can hear, but the other characters present on stage cannot. So it's like an aside. Okay. Lady Shakuntala does appear greatly indisposed. Indisposed means she is not well. She does not look healthy. I wonder if it's the summer's heat that is the real cause of her distress. So he is trying to surmise what can be the reason behind Shakuntala's distress. Or is it what I think it is? So he is trying to convince himself that it is not the summer's heat, but the thoughts of Dushyanto which has unsettled Shakuntala. Priyamvada says to Anushuva, "Anushuva, ever since she first saw the king, Shakuntala has been restless and dejected. There can be no other reason for her sickness." And Anushuva replies, "I suspected as much myself. Very well, I'll ask her." So they speak among themselves, Anushuva and Priyamvada, and they understand because they have been with Shakuntala all through her life and they understand her that this has never happened to her ever. So now it must be Dushyanto because that experience is something very new to Shakuntala. So they address her directly. Anushuva speaks, "Shakuntala dearest, I wish to ask you something. See how your limbs are simply burning." So Shakuntala is actually feeling feverish. And the king, he speaks from another side of the stage. "Quite so. Those bracelets of plaited lotus fiber, bright as moonbeams, now turning brown." So the lotus fiber which Shakuntala is wearing as a bracelet, because remember she is not a city lady who wears jewelry, gold jewelry. Her jewelry is made from the vines and the flowers of the forest. That is why I am always constantly referring to her as the daughter of nature, as a woman of nature. Her beauty is because of her connection with the natural world. So the lotus vines which she is wearing as ornaments, they are drooping down, turning brown because of the heat in her body. Shakuntala now asks her friends, "What did you wish to ask me, dear?" "Listen, dear Shakuntala, we cannot enter your mind and read your thoughts, but we feel that the state you are in is like that of persons experiencing the pangs of love as described in romantic tales. So be frank, tell us the cause of your distress. Without knowing the nature of an illness, how can a cure be found for it?" So what is the function of Anushuva and Priyamvada here? They are functioning as what we find in case of Greek choric characters, where the secondary characters, they offer additional dimension to the characters who are the focus of a play. So Anushuva and Priyamvada, they are working as a unit. Although you may find individuality in the two women, but so far as their function is concerned, the function is a unanimous function of providing us with information regarding Shakuntala, because through the conversations between Shakuntala and Anushuva Priyamvada, we get to understand about what happens in the drama, what is happening inside the mind of Shakuntala, and so on. Shakuntala admits that she is deeply troubled. "Indeed, I am deeply troubled, but I cannot blurt it out abruptly." So she accepts the fact that she is disturbed by these emotions inside her, but she cannot openly declare what is happening inside her heart. Now Priyamvada also insists that Shakuntala speaks out and says, "Dearest, Anashua is perfectly right. Why are you hiding the cause of your distress? You are wasting away day by day. All that is left is the delicate glow of your loveliness, like the luster of fine pearls." The king understands that Shakuntala hesitates to speak out because of her modesty. Because as I was discussing earlier in the previous videos, that shyness and coyness is considered to be virtues, and maidens are not expected to speak their mind, because being forward, being assertive in love is the sign of a fallen woman. So Shakuntala is not able to communicate her desires, is not able to speak about what she is feeling because of these social constraints. The king understands this. He says, asked by friends who share her joys and sorrows, the young girl cannot but speak of the ache hid within her heart. Although I saw her turn round many a time, gazing at me with hungering eyes, my heart beats now like a coward's, fearing to hear the answer she makes. So the king knows that Shakuntala is drawn towards him, but he is afraid that she won't be able to speak out about her love. But she does. From the moment that royal sage, who is the protector of penance groves, came within my sight, and then she cannot say. So she is trying to give these hints to her friends that the cause of her weariness, the cause of her absent-mindedness is the presence of this man, of Dushyanta. Go on, tell us, dear. From that instant, I am pining for love of him. So she finally says, fortunately, you have set your heart on one truly worthy of you. But then, where else would a great river flow except to the ocean? So her friends, they are comparing Shakuntala to the river and Dushyanta to the ocean. And just like the way a river inevitably flows into the ocean or the sea, Shakuntala is bound to flow into Dushyanta's life, as if that is the call of the nature, the call of fate. And the king is very happy. I have heard what I longed to hear. Love, the creator of my anguish, now brings a touch of cooling balm. So love, which is the reason for the king's sorrow or suffering, is now the reason for his happiness. So that is the special quality of love. It can provide both anxiety and suffering and happiness and peace. As days dark with clouds at summer's end bring relief to the world of living things. Shakuntala goes on to say, my friends, if you approve, counsel me as to how I can find favor in the eyes of the royal sage. Otherwise, I shall be just a memory. Shakuntala knows that she is not skilled enough in the games of love, so she wants some advice from her friends. Priyamvada says to Anashua in an aside, she is too far gone in love and cannot brook any delay. Brook means tolerate. So she cannot tolerate any delay. Priyamvada, what plan can we devise to fulfill our friend's desire secretly and without any delay? And Priyamvada knows that, yes, they can do things to speed things up, but to do it secretly is the problem. And after some deliberation, they finally decide to suggest Shakuntala to write a letter. Shakuntala says, I do not have the equipments to write a letter, and they say that you write it with your nails on a leaf. So this expression, writing with your nails on a lotus leaf, this also reinforces the idea of the world of nature, which is away from the court's educated life, literary life. And the poetry of Shakuntala is the poetry of the lotus leaf. The poetry of Shakuntala is the beauty of the natural surroundings which she is in. So she represents, even in the words which she utters, the flavor of nature. And she says, just skip a few lines, I do not know your heart, but my nights and days, O pitiless one, are haunted by love. So she also expressed the same kind of anxiety which Dushyanta expresses earlier, that she does not know about what is going on inside the heart of Dushyanta, as every part of me yearns to be one with you. Now the king comes out. Love burns you true, my slender girl, but me he consumes utterly, relentless. Day wipes out the moon from view, but not the water lily. So he is now comparing his love with Shakuntala's love, saying that Shakuntala's love is hurting her, burning her, but his love has completely destroyed him. Now the friends are very happy, now that the king has come. Welcome, welcome to the immediate answer to our inmost wish. And then Shakuntala tries to get up and the king says, please don't get up, and they offer him the seat beside her. He sits beside her and they continue talking. When the king asks Priyamvada that what is Shakuntala's state of health now, Priyamvada says, well, I shall say it then, your honor. It is the duty of the king to relieve the sufferings of the residents of a hermitage. The king says, what higher duty can there be? The god of love, mighty as he is, has reduced our dear friend here to this state for love of you. You are bound therefore to sustain her life by taking her. So Priyamvada is proposing to the king to accept Shakuntala, because only through acceptance Shakuntala can be revived. She can get back her happiness, she can get back her life. And the king is very happy with the proposal, of course. Dear lady, this is a mutual wish and entreaty. Entreaty means appeal or application. So he is very happy to oblige. I am most highly favored. Shakuntala is now trying to pretend that they should stop this. That's enough, Priyamvada. Do not hold back the good king, who must be impatient to return to the inner apartments of the royal palace. Now this is an indirect hint to the idea that Dushyanta has a family in the city and he has obligations at home. And the king says, O lady, enshrined in my heart, if you consider my heart devoted to none but you, as otherwise, then think of me slain once by the arrow of the god who makes men mad. So he is slain, he is killed by the arrow of the god of love. As slain once more, O lady, whose glances pour into me like delicious wine. So he is trying to convince Shakuntala that she is at present the only thing that matters to him. Anasua continues to question king's allegiance. Sire, one hears that kings have many loves. Pray, act in such a manner as not to bring sorrow and bitter tears to her kinsfolk. So Anasua is not just asking Dushyanta not to hurt Shakuntala. She is also asking him not to hurt the other women in his life by, getting rid of them because of Shakuntala. So this is a unique situation which we find in this traditional natak, where a king's life is displayed in front of us. And the king says, gracious lady, I shall just say this, though many a wife may grace our palace courts. So he is not denying the fact that he has relationships with other women. None but two shall ever be the glory and mainstay of our race. So he is talking about two women. Now, interestingly, he's actually talking about one woman. Why? It is believed that when a king is very powerful, he becomes the ruler of the earth, which in other words, we can say he becomes wedded to earth, because being a husband means being the controlling figure. And if you are controlling the earth, you become the husband of the earth. So in Dushyanta's eyes, the two most important wives he will ever have, one will be the earth and second our Shakuntala. The earth sea-girdled and this lady your friend. Sea-girdled in the sense it was believed that the earth is surrounded by sea or the ocean, which is like a girdle or a belt around the earth's body. So here Dushyanta is kind of committing to Shakuntala, saying that he will be completely committed to her, completely dedicated to her, and not to any other mortal beings. Shakuntala is very happy, overjoyed. And after some time, Priyambada and Anushka, they decide to leave the place and allow them some privacy. Just when they are preparing to leave, Shakuntala is visibly distressed because she is nervous, and she says, "Friends, dear friends, do not leave me alone. Let one of you go. I am helpless with no one to turn to." So although Shakuntala is in love with Dushyanto, she wants to be with him, but somehow she feels shaken at the idea of being alone with him. Now all these emotions are natural for her because she is governed by the rules and dictates of a culture, of a tradition where a woman's decision must be accompanied with the blessings of her parents or of her guardians. Friends are saying, "He whom the whole world turns to for help is by your side. So why are you worried? Because why should you need our help? Because Dushyanto, the great king, is beside you and is going to help everybody else. So why would you need us? What? Have they gone already and left me alone?" And now the king wants to comfort Shakuntala. He is visibly very elated at the fact that they are all alone now. "My love, do not be uneasy. Am I not near you, your suitor who adores you utterly? Tell me, shall I raise cool breezes waving over you, these broad lotus leaf fans, moist and refreshing to relieve your languid weariness? So you are feeling tired. Should I make you more comfortable by fanning you, by doing all these things? Shall I place your lotus pink feet on my lap, O lady with beautiful tapering thighs, and press them tenderly to ease your pain?" So he is offering to press her legs so that she feels less tired. And then Shakuntala replies, and her reply is very important here, "I shall not bring dishonor on those whom I should honor." So this has double meanings. On one hand, she says that if she puts her feet on the lap of the king, then that is an act of dishonor because the king is an honorable person, and placing her feet on the lap of the king would dishonor him, show disrespect, which she doesn't want to do. And on the other hand, placing her feet on the lap of the king would mean she is going against the codes that the parents impose upon her, the codes of honor. So the parental figures whom she honors would be dishonored if she offers her body to the king. So this has double meanings. And then the king goes on to address her, court her. "Beautiful girl, the day is not cool as yet. Look at your condition." And he tries to embrace her, to turn her towards him. And then Shakuntala is a bit afraid. "Let go of me, release me. I am not free to do as I please. But what can I do when I have only my friends to help me? Oh misery, you make me feel ashamed of myself." So the king is a bit disappointed because Shakuntala is making a big fuss about him touching her, and he feels that he is doing something which he shouldn't do, and he feels bad. And then Shakuntala realizes that she is causing him this uncomfortable feeling, and she wants to reassure him, "I don't mean to, your majesty. I'm just blaming my fate." So she is not actually telling him that she doesn't want him to touch her. She is telling him that it is her fate which demands her to act with restraint, to act according to rules of society, for which she is feeling bad, for which she is trying to stop the king, not because she does not want him to touch her. Why do you rail at a fate that is favorable to you? But the fate has been favorable to you because the fate has brought me to you. And why won't I rail against my fate that tempts me when I am not my own mistress, with qualities not my own? So she knows that this fate is trying to provoke her to do something which she is not capable of doing. And then the king says, "It is not love who torments virgins to gain his ends. It is they who torment love, letting the moment slip by." So he is playing with this word love and saying that love doesn't make people suffer. People make love suffer by not taking hold of moment. So he is almost talking about seizing the moment and enjoying it. That will be the fruitfulness of that moment. And then Shakuntala leaves and the king is very distressed. What, shall I not please myself? So you see, love in this case is mostly a physical one, where the king is desiring a physical fulfillment, physical intimacy with Shakuntala. And he is not engaging in any intellectual or even emotional conversation with her. He is praising her body, he is desiring her body. She is also responding on the level of physicality. After some time, as he gets hold of Shakuntala by her garment, Shakuntala says, with a bit of anger, with a show of anger, not a real anger here, Paurava. Paurava means a king who belongs to the Puru dynasty. Here Dushyanta is the Paurava. Act with decorum. Ascetics constantly move about here. So these notions of decorum, propriety, these are coming into play here. Fair lady, such fear of your elders. His Holiness Kanno is well versed in the law. You will not cause him any distress. So he is now giving her the legal aspects of their union, how they can legalize their union. Many are the daughters of sages married by the Gandharva rite. So Gandharva rite means where two people get married without any social ceremonies, without any kind of presence of a third person, in presence of gods, which means that they agree to a mutual commitment. That is Gandharva marriage. So he is offering her this Gandharva marriage. We hear, and once married, felicitated with joyful acceptance by their fathers. And once they are married in this Gandharva mode, then their parents agree happily to their union. So he is offering her this chance to get united with him without the fear of Kanno's disapproval. And then while they are talking and they started, walking out into the open, the king realizes they are now out in the open. And Shakuntala says, Paurava, even though your wishes remain unfulfilled and you know me only through conversation, do not forget me. So Shakuntala, who knows that Dushyanta is attracted to her because of her physical beauty, also knows that if she does not allow him to taste her beauty, to get intimate with her, he might forget her. So somehow this becomes a demeaning statement that she is actually doubting Dushyanta's love, saying that if he doesn't get his desires fulfilled, he would forget her. The king says, my beautiful girl, however far you may go from me, you shall never go from my heart, as the shadow of the tree at evening never leaves its base on the eastern side. Interestingly, he talks about a shadow here. A shadow is the most precarious thing, most unstable thing you can compare love with. Because, yes, on the evening, the shadow falls on the eastern side because the sun is on the western side. But for how long? Like moments later or moments after, when the sun is down, the shadow is vanished. Therefore, these kinds of images which are used here by Dushyanta is like a premonition, ironic, because he will eventually forget her, just like that shadow which disappears just when the sun is set. So it is not very prudent for him to compare his love with a shadow, saying that the shadow is steadfast and does not change. The shadow changes. Dushyanta knows it. I don't know why he uses this image, but he does. Shakuntala is overwhelmed with all this kind of expressions, and she doesn't question him about the shadow here. She actually feels that the king is very steadfast, very solidly in love with her. And then she goes on to hide behind a bush, and her bracelet of that lotus twig that falls, the king picks that up. Seeing that, Shakuntala wants to go and talk to the king again. She does that. I cannot hold back any longer. Using this bracelet as a pretext, I shall discover myself. The king is overjoyed and says that he will give that lotus twig, that bracelet back on one condition. And what's that? that I myself restore it to the place it once occupied. This means that the king will tie back that bracelet on Shakuntala's arm, and in the process he touches her. Oh, to feel such a touch! Has fate rained down a shower ambrosial to make the tree of love, once burnt to ashes by Shiva's wrath, put forth a fresh shoot once more? So just at the moment when he touches Shakuntala's arms, he feels that god of love who was burned down by Shiva's anger, he had turned into ashes, and from that ashes a new shoot has come up, a new life has come up, because Shakuntala's touch is like the shower of Amrita, the shower of ambrosia. Shakuntala wants him to tie that bracelet up fast, and they make small talk. We understand that they are talking about lilies and lotuses and twigs and plants, but they are actually talking about desires. They are talking about coming close to each other. You can see they are approaching that point where we will see the rasa of Shringar stepping into the folds of the Natak. So this is where you see the Shringar rasa at its highest. And then Shakuntala talks about trust here. What if I don't trust you? Why not? A new servant does not overstep his master's instructions. So the king says that I will only tie the bracelet, I'll only take away those pollens of lily from your eyes. I will not do anything else because it's your instruction, which as a servant I will follow. I will not approach you any further. It is just this excess of gallantry that I can't quite trust. So they are making small talk here, and they are basically talking about getting more intimate at this moment. Oh, you with your intoxicating eyes, why don't you stop suspecting me of dishonorable behavior? Dishonorable behavior as in, forcing her to have sex with him or something. But the king says that I won't be doing any such thing. I won't be doing anything against your will. So why are you not trusting me? And they go on talking, but sadly nothing happens here, and Gautami enters. The king, of course, hides to a secret place. Shakuntala speaks with Gautami, who asks her to return home now that evening is approaching, and she says to herself, oh heart. So she's disappointed, she was expecting things to happen. Now someone comes in, interrupts them, and the moment is gone. Oh heart, at first you drew back like a coward, fearing to taste the happiness that came knocking at your door. So she is admonishing herself, rebuking herself for being a coward, because she wasted so much time trying not to go close to the king. Now to your great regret, the time of parting has come. How bitter is your anguish. O fragrant bower of creepers, soother of my anguish, I bid you farewell and take leave of you, only to meet again and enjoy your company. So she is not actually talking to these leaves and plants. Whenever she talks to leaves and plants, remember, she's actually talking to somebody else or talking about something else. So she knows that Dushyanta is hiding. He will be able to hear what she is saying and says that she will return to meet him. So Shakuntala leaves. The king comes out of his hiding place and says to the audience, "Oh misery, many a hindrance lies between desire and its fulfillment." So although the act is called love's fruition, we see that the king's desire is not yet fulfilled in the true sense of the word. He reflects, "Alas, it was surely a mistake on my part to have delayed and wasted time once I had won my beloved." They were, spending time making small talk about twigs and leaves and flowers and fruits. So he says that I shouldn't have wasted time. I should have fulfilled my desires. So now what he decides, when next I find myself alone with her, that girl with a face of chiseled loveliness. Chiseled means when you carve a statue, you use a chisel and you make that carving beautifully. Shakuntala's face is like that chiseled statue. Chiseled loveliness, I lose no time. So next time I'm going to be with her, I'm going to straight go to the point. For happiness, as a rule, is hard to come by. Thus my foolish heart, frustrated by stumbling blocks, all these obstacles in love, spells it out. But in the beloved's presence, it stands somewhat abashed. But he knows that whenever he is in front of Shakuntala, all this resolve to act, kind of vanishes, because he gets conscious of his actions. And then somebody from behind, a voice in the air says, "O king, the evening rituals are in solemn progress." So they have started the rituals of the evening. Flesh-eating demons prowl and press round the altars. So these cannibals, these demons have come and started to disturb the religious rituals, and the people of the ashram, they are seeking the help of the king. The king listens and then speaks, "So there, ascetics, do not fear. Here I am coming," and he leaves. So he rushes out to help the ascetics. So the act, which begins with this prelude where the ascetic is speaking about Dushyanta's brave actions to get rid of the demons, ends with another hint at an act of bravery which he is going to commit now, chasing away these demons over again. So we see that the way Kalidas is presenting Dushyanta is, alternating between two personalities. One personality, the ruler, the protector, the king, who is considerate towards the requests of his subjects. And on the other hand, we see a helpless man, pathetically in love, talking about romantic imagery. And these two images, these two personalities are both equally present in Dushyanta. So we have to see how in the course of this play, he negotiates with these two personalities, one of reason, rationality, and one of romanticism. So in the course of this play, as we will go through the next acts, we will try to analyze how Dushyanta's character emerges as a combination of these two traits. So this act is important because it establishes Dushyanta and Shakuntala's relationship, and at the same time it leaves us with the questions about the legality of this marriage, of this union, the future of Shakuntala, and the position of Dushyanta as a king and a lover. So I think this act is now clear to you, and we are ready for our discussion of Act 4, which we will be taking up in our next session. Thank you all for being here with me. I would love you to subscribe to my channel and post any comments which you have for me regarding this video or any other video which I can make for you. Till next time, stay happy, stay subscribed. Bye-bye.